We're here today to discuss the Homestead Act, a law passed in 1862 in the US. What it was, why they passed it, and what its consequences were. First, some context. The US of 1862 was different from today. The government had just spent the last 50 years acquiring the land to the Pacific, either by buying it, fighting for it, or simply claiming it for themselves. But there was a small problem. Between 1840 and 1860, if people travelled west, they were drawn by the prospect of finding gold, so they would travel all the way over to California. The government had all this land, but nobody was stopping to live there. So they passed a law called the Homestead Act and said that if people were willing to move west, then the government would give them free land, as long as they were willing to build a home there and farm the land for 5 years. Sounds like a good deal to me. The government thought that having farmers in the West would be good for the country in many ways. It would increase the production of food, help the economy grow, and create new towns and communities. Anyone who was at least 21 years old could apply for this free land. And at a time of extreme unequal rights between men and women, interestingly, women were able to take advantage of this act in the same way that men were. In addition, many African Americans also headed west after becoming free. They packed up their belongings and travelled for weeks or months before they arrived at their new piece of land. They built houses, cleared the land, and planted crops. Phew! That's a lot of hard work! Homesteaders faced many challenges. They had to build their houses and barns from scratch, using whatever materials were available. Many of the people who migrated there were poor and had limited access to tools. They lived with extreme weather, suffering droughts, blizzards, and heat waves that could damage their crops or homes. The ground was tough and difficult to plough. Insects could damage their crops, and sometimes they had very little to harvest. On top of all that, the grassy plains in the west were prone to wildfires, and there was a serious lack of water. 3 out of 5 homesteaders abandoned their land, and of course, this was more likely to happen to the ones that were poor and had few resources to begin with. So the deal wasn't quite as good as it sounds at first. Despite that, the Homestead Act had a big impact on US history and geography. It encouraged many people to move to the West and settle there. They created farms, started towns, and built communities. Unfortunately, it also continued to ignore the rights of the people already living there, the Native Americans who were forced into reservations. The land that people claimed under the Homestead Act became farms, and the West transformed into a place of agriculture. Crops like wheat, corn, and vegetables were grown, and these farms helped feed people across the country. As people moved westward, new states were created. The Homestead Act played a significant role in the westward expansion of the United States.